So we're going to talk about why that maybe is. But how are you first off, man? Fuck, do you want to go again?
It's okay, man. Yeah, we can.
Right, okay, take two. Hello, welcome back to another one. I don't really know what this is. It's not often that me do these. I guess they could maybe be. Fuck. Right. Oh, shit. Yeah, I'm putting these on. Right, okay. Hello, welcome back, or welcome here for the first time if you are new to us and have discovered us via the lovely YouTube algorithm. I'm here with 563, who is our head of research at Blockmates. I have no idea what I do, but we are here in this episode. If you've tuned in and wondering whether you're on the right video, this is going to be talking a lot about the growing advancements and developments in the AI sector. More specifically, should you be afraid of what is being built? And it's, spoiler alert, the answer is yes. But this kind of interview arc that we've been doing is kind of born off the back of some research that we did. I say we, 563, posted on Blockmates, which was actually for our meal deal subscribers, which is sort of our like premium research platform. But we recently made it live for free via 563's account, which I will pull up shortly. And we're going to get into that a little bit today and in that episode. But first things first, how are you, mate?
Doing good, man. Yeah, I'm excited to go through this. It's not exactly crypto related, but we talk about how crypto kind of offers that escape hatch towards the end. This whole decentralization factor that pulls against the centralization. But we'll get into it.
Yeah, because I think that we'll probably try and take you on a bit of a journey with it, and though it might be a little bit bleak, in the same way that the article starts, that the growing end result is that it doesn't actually have to be that bad, as long as the development is done properly and well and in the right way, which is sort of why you've written this entire piece, correct? I imagine this has been a little bit of a labor of love for you, and it is up on screen here if you're listening. If you're watching, obviously. If you're listening, you can find this on 563's account, which is at 563DeFi, 563 Blockmates. Or you could go to the Blockmates account, which I believe it's up there. Have we put it up as meal deal free, or have we just left it behind? Yeah. So you can also find it on there too, which I'll pull up on my screen at some point. But yeah, just talk me through like how this piece came into the world, and then I want to just quiz you about a few things that have been on my mind about it.
Yeah, sure. I think this all kind of started as something that was going through my mind once OpenAI dropped this memory capability. I don't know if you remember that, but basically, as you're going through and talking to ChatGPT, it'll now like store some memories, so it'll better answer you, better serve you. And I don't know, just kind of, if you play that out towards natural progression, it's just these guys just get more and more of their hooks into you. They understand you better. You're more likely to stay on that application. Even if others put out models that are better, you're more likely to stick to someone that has more of your data. So it's just that flywheel of these products are meant to just grab your data and keep you on the platform. So you get better data, so they get better models, so they can serve you better. And it's just kind of like social media squared at that point. That whole playbook. Yeah.
It's very, very difficult to change user behavior. We all know that. It's even, once you're so used to something and you're kind of in the groove of it and you know it inside out, even if you know that there's an alternative that is actually better on all fronts, that's the challenge, isn't it? And I think that's where you're going with the whole OpenAI, ChatGPT model and everything that we're seeing now. Like, most people just see a really good product, it's new, it's novel. And the kind of one thing I like throughout the piece is you kind of talk about this fact that we are, I think there's a line in it where you've said like most users won't be on board in AI, they'll be sliding into a relationship with it, is how you put it. Which again is super dark, super dark to think about. It reminds me like, the Joaquin Phoenix, Spike Jonze movie, Her. So it's like, where does that go? Because personally, I know I'm feeling that already. Like when I was in Asia the other week, I used Grok on the entire trip, and I know we're talking about like centralized v decentralized here, But my wife was like blown away. She was like, just Google it. And I was like, just saying to Grok, design my day. Which is like,
it, it's great.
and yeah, it is. But like, what are the, beyond what kind of to dig deeper and double click on what you just said there, what are the dangers that if you were listening and you thought, what's the problem with using AI? As far as ChatGPT and the most like off the shelf like supermarket models, if for lack of a better term, if you were listening to this and you were completely alien to the entire sector, why could that be a problem? First of all, because I think it's important that we educate people on like similarly how you've done in the article, which I've read twice now, by the way. It's important to sort of understand the tech stack, which we'll get into, and that throws up why it's problematic, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think the problem lies in the fact that we're using AI for certain things in our lives. I go through the article about, the different roles that AI fills now, whether that's like super basic ones for now, right? It's like helping you write your resume or helping you
Yeah,
learn about
and the
languages.
language. Yeah,
Yeah, or you just can just like use it for, I use it for recipes a lot. So, I mean,
yeah,
that's fine. It knows certain things about you, but I think the next worrying thing is when it starts leveling up. Like I list some categories here, whether it levels up in its agency, its capabilities, its awareness, then it can start fulfilling more roles in your life. And at what point does
yeah,
that become worrisome? Does that become like you're offloading a lot of your mental capacity, mental brain power to
yeah.
this tool, and it begins to understand you better and better, which is like, there's two sides to that. It makes for a better app experience, but it also makes you vulnerable because this third party knows so much about you.
So if we talk about roles, one thing you did in the article is you split the models up into characteristics. Um, and I just want to get into that a little bit, where we talk about agency, capability, and awareness, and how that influences the roles that these models are likely to play. So whether we're talking about this thing being your therapist, or I don't know, your, your, your sex model that you'd like to chat to, like in bloody the way it goes in the movie, like how does that define the way these models are trained? And can we just get into that a little bit?
Yeah, I think classifying all these different characteristics helps understand it. Like, yeah, it helps classify. People like categories. So I put it into three different categories: agency, capability, awareness. So, agency, you can think of just like how independently it can act and with what tools. So, it starts off really reactive. It has to act on its own, or you have to like prompt it to act. And eventually, you can get a little more proactive, or eventually, like maybe way down the line it can become autonomous. It can govern itself. It can define how it wants to, like it can set objectives and accomplish those
Mm-hmm.
objectives. We're not really there yet, but same thing you can think about for capability, maybe like intelligence. As it gets better and better, gets smarter and smarter. And awareness, how aware it is of the world around it as well as of you, the user. So every time we go up that ladder of like adding those capabilities there, it's more roles it could fulfill in your life. Basically, that's the argument I make throughout the piece. Is as it makes those unlocks, it can start fulfilling a lot more roles. Like as it gets really smart and aware of like your emotions, it can be a better therapist, like you
Mm-hmm.
mentioned. If there's like if you can become aware of what's going on around your house, it can like be that butler for you and manage all your robotics around the house. It could be your career coach. It could be
Yeah.
your lawyer, all of those things.
So on one hand, that sounds amazing, doesn't it? But on the
Yeah.
other hand, how do we? So there's two questions baked in this. How do we stop that from being a bad thing? But the answer how that becomes a bad thing as well, it essentially makes the human workforce redundant, right? So like,
Well,
what where does that go? I feel like you had a preloaded answer there.
it's yeah, it can be good and bad. Like it's obviously this gets towards this like a utopia version where everyone has all these little robots that are working for them. I think the only thing we have to be aware of is who owns the data that we're giving up and
Yeah,
what that data can be used against us basically. Like we go into this a couple of different scenarios within the piece, like how bad could it really get? And I think that's
yeah.
really where we start asking our questions.
So let's do that then. So now we have the kind of the groundworks laid. I want to talk about centralized AI v decentralized AI. The latter being how we, being a primarily crypto media business, have the right to talk about this. Um, talk about from a top line point of view the difference. We've touched on the data. We all know the social media game and how that works. Um, in the article, there's a quote from the Perplexity CEO who says
Yeah.
that browser will track everything users do online to sell hyper personalized advertisements. I mean, it's already pretty difficult for me not to buy everything that appears on my Instagram feed. How am I going to stop that once AI even knows? I don't know. I can't think of something hyper personal I want to really reveal on this podcast. So yeah, there's the question for you to tackle first.
Yeah, I mean, you can think of it as the journey that we went through with just social media, like you said there.
Yeah,
So that personalization that Instagram, Facebook understands about you helps them dole out super specific ads. And
yeah,
the level of detail and personalization that people are already using ChatGPT for, like there's Gen Zers that talk to it and say that it's their best friend. Like I remember seeing some things on Instagram pop up, and it's just like me and ChatGPT recently, and it's just them dancing with the robot and singing through the streets, and that's just
yeah,
how people see it. And you can just imagine the level of detail and the level of personal classifications they can make on that.
yeah,
But you can also see it as like, okay, they know which kinds of buttons to push on you. They know exactly what your trigger points are. That could be used for, who would you want to give that up to?
yeah.
That's the
And
worrying bit.
one of the things, like one of these questions, GPT asked for a photo of my penis. Is this normal?
Yeah, that was on the
Yeah,
Chat GPT subreddit. It was so good.
as these things always come out of Reddit, don't they? But one point that you made in this is AI two started open, helpful, collaborative, and I'd argue it largely still is at this point. But the infrastructure is drifting towards proprietary modes and closed incentives. To be clear, this risk isn't failure. The risk is blind trust and just enough to manipulate. So it sounds to me like what you're saying is once we implement total agency and initiative and intent, that's when we're in trouble. So this piece fundamentally obviously talks about the need for decentralization over centralization. But what one thing I wanted to talk to you about is when this first started coming to light, when the first we started to understand how to train large language models, and there was an argument that it shouldn't be open source to avoid it getting in the hands of the wrong people, and just how anyone should be able to build that. Is that not a counter argument to that? So despite the fact that you're handing over endless amounts of data that is hyper personalized to these centralized players, is the counter argument not that there's a greater risk in allowing anybody to get their hands on this,
On the LLMs themselves.
on just general training of these models and building them themselves and
I
all that
really
kind of
don't
thing?
see that as the main risk. I feel like there are plenty of opportunities for like centralized players out there, whether that's like government funded or not government funded, to build these things.
Mm,
I would much rather live in a world where everything is understood and everyone can co-own and co-sponsor these models as they are built, um, because it's not a great end scenario either to have one global owner of these models and of the data that lives
yeah,
on top of the models. I'm kind of the mind that a lot of these models will be just commoditized, and it's just how you keep users on top of your platform, like how ChatGPT is trying to do, like the login with OpenAI and that sort of thing. Like you'd be able to
yeah.
access your ChatGPT model on Facebook or whatever,
Hmm.
and that's just, I don't know. I don't think that's a great ending scenario either.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree. It's as you said when we first started the pod. It's the same game that we've seen the attention economy
Yeah.
repeated tenfold in the most terrifying way possible, I suppose.
Yeah, and we've seen what happens with like Cambridge Analytica. I talk about
Yeah,
that in the piece too.
yeah,
Like that was super crude. Like it it understand like your super basic ideas and was able to sway voters. And now you can think of, okay,
mm,
you have a personalized agent that's in charge of just you to sway you, and it knows your entire background, it knows your entire history, and it knows like how you're feeling today. So it can easily push those buttons. I mean, we already saw that. Did you see that Reddit lies thing that went out? There was this experiment done on this subreddit called Change My View, and that's where
Okay.
people will like offer up a post and say, "This is my view, change my view," and people on Reddit will like post and give their argument for why you should change your view, and the original poster will say, "Okay, you changed my view." Like it'll award one person with that changed their view the most, and these like agents were just assigned to change people's views, and they were really good at it um, because they could just spend all day trying to learn about this person and to change
Yeah.
their view.
God. So what level of capability are we talking for those kind of models?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty basic, right? The
Right.
models that they're using now are just fairly basic. I'd have to go check and see what model they used for that Reddit lies thing, but it was 6 times more capable than any other commenter on there. So it's quite substantial. And all that we're
Yeah.
missing now is just the intent of these large
Intent.
language model owners. Yeah, just that's all it's missing because they have the capability to already do this.
So if we have, again, to go back to this, if we have this issue where you implement intent and anybody can do that, how is that? How do we control that when there is no centralized entity? Can we?
Well, no, I think the issue is that when you have it all centralized, they're incentivized to gather up as much data as possible. I think if you're able to create a system where you can use apps that are just as good, but no one owns it, and you can prove that the data that you're giving up is either completely owned by you or private, or if you're giving it up because you earned some kind of kickback. I think those are the options that you could have if it's a decentralized platform.
I see. Okay. I'm not going to take it in that direction just yet, but I wanted to talk about this concept of like digital twins
Oh, sure.
and how every time we succumb or submit to these, you know, when we're interacting with an LLM or whatever it may be, there's this concept that a synthetic version of yourself can be built with like the scraps of data that it picks up. So whether it's social posts, voice clips, behavioral ticks, I think some of the things you said. What can we go a bit further into that and how that works, and then obviously all the scary stuff about who owns that?
Yeah, I mean, this concept of a digital twin has been around for a little bit, especially in the engineering world where I come from. Like, you have this physical model out there. Well, you're building something, you're building a car, whatever,
Yeah,
and you want to represent that on a computer because then you could test it a bunch, you could crash it, and keep redoing that. And having that digital manifestation just gives you so many more opportunities. But you can imagine it can go awry if it's some company out there building a digital twin of you, trying to map like, oh, this is your entire background, this is your emotional state,
yeah,
these are things that you like, dislike, and given enough data, that digital twin becomes to align more and more with how you think and how you feel. So, at what point can they take the digital twin and ask it like, okay, well, they like this advertisement or that advertisement? Like,
yeah.
um,
Fuck.
can you get their feedback about like if it's this famous director, can you get this feedback about this the script I wrote, and can they charge people for that? Just there's a lot of different ways you can take it. Maybe like whole Minority Report thing where it's like, would this person commit this crime if given all these scenario? If so, maybe we should arrest them ahead of time before they do that. Obviously, that's yeah. Go watch that movie, but or can, like, do you own that data? Basically, like, can it be licensed? Can it be
Yeah,
sold?
yeah,
Is that you? Yeah, and I think I make a point in here that even if you trust the company that's building that digital twin of you, like leaks happen all the time. Like social
yeah.
security numbers are leaked, medical records are leaked. It just the fact that that exists is like there's a risk there.
Okay. Um, if you're still listening, because this is super,
Sorry, yeah, it's pretty dark.
yeah, it's pretty dark. I want to like maybe we can bring it to the light ever
Yeah,
so slightly and talk about how to opt out of that and the push for decentralization. as is sort of like maybe the halfway through. And I want to talk about the stack which we mentioned and how, the integrated layers, and you kind of got the model training and the inference and hosting and then the interface layer.
Yep.
Go top line on that for me.
Yeah, I think it's important because, um, in the end, I don't think it's going to be centralized or decentralized that wins out. I think it's going to be both. I think there's going to be winners in different sectors. I think that's where a lot of people get this wrong is they think, oh, these decentralized versions aren't as good right now. So therefore there is no space in this pie for decentralized versions or parts of these layers. So first we'll start with that. And then, yeah, we talk about these layers because I think it's important to understand like that it's not just one company that builds one thing and that's the only thing you should focus on.
Yeah.
There's the model training itself, which is a big part of the stack, but it is just one of the part of the stack. So you have pre-training and post-training. We won't get into that here, but that's the actual training of the models that exist. So like
Yeah.
O3, R1, whatever. And then you have to actually host those models on a server somewhere and you have to ping it. Pinging it is it's called inference. And that exists as well. And then there's an interface.
Interacting with the AI
Yeah,
in
exactly.
layman's
Your
terms.
interaction
Yeah.
with it.
Yeah.
So it exists somewhere, and then there's an inference layer, and that's where the front ends are: the apps, the
Yeah.
agents, the assistants that go out and ping that model. So we go into like each of these layers and how they can be decentralized out and who is working on that. That's kind of what we call that escape hatch.
Yeah.
That and that's the entire idea, the entire trade really is that you believe that not a lot of people care about AI privacy right now, and that should increase over time. That's all. That's the entire thesis that we're running with here. Is that I put in this graphic like less than 1% of people care about AI privacy now, and maybe in 5 years, maybe 10% care. Um, Maybe more, maybe less. And I'm just saying it should increase over time. That people should care more about this over time. And I think that it will as it becomes more divisive. But throughout the next sections, we talk about some projects that are working on each of those layers of the stack, whether that's training new models from a completely decentralized perspective. There's a lot of projects working on that. We list Jensen, Noose, Prime Intellect, Templar, Ambient, Pluralis. They're all working on how do we build models from scratch that so we don't have to rely on these giant labs to give us
Mhm.
those out of the being nice to us, um, and I think that's a big part of the power dynamic shift is getting that capability to build those models. Because if we don't, then we're just completely at the mercy of these giant labs,
Yeah.
and that's worrisome to me at least.
Yeah. And just to go back a sec, why do you
Yeah.
think that we have this when we talk about the escape hatch and how many people? Like, I guarantee if I went out into my city now and stopped people in the street and said, How worried are you about AI and privacy?" I would hesitate. It would be less than 1%. If that's as low as it. Can we get it in the minuses? Does telling me to f off count as a minus? Why is that? Is it just a lack of education, or is it also the fact that is it quite sneaky in the way that Facebook and Web 2 were, in that people don't even really know what's happening until they kind of step back and go, "Oh, holy shit! This thing knows that I like certain serrated kitchen knives," and I don't know why it's the first thing that came to
That's
mind.
great.
Why do you think that is?
Yeah, I think it's a combination. I think we are pretty far into the weeds that we use all this stuff every day, and we understand the fact that it's so easy to give up more
Mm,
information if we're using it so much. And I don't know, maybe just the fact that we're in crypto, we're a bit paranoid about security and safety, and
yeah.
open source, and worrying about centralization wherever it occurs and wherever it manifests. So yeah, I think that's just how it goes. I think we're just more aware of it.
Right. So let's talk about interfaces. And
Sure.
we started this with talking about the movie Her, um, and we said that if you haven't seen the movie, it starts with Joaquin Phoenix's character, um, basically speaking to an AI that is in Scarlett Johansson's voice, which is irresistible from the start. By the way, like Soon as
That
I'd be
helps.
a I'd be a goner as well. And then the movie develops that he falls in love with the AI and all this kind of thing. Where do we go with that? Are we at the point of is it super realistic to think that you're kind of going to end up with like the brain chip interface, Black Mirror
Ooh.
type shit? Like, where do you think? If we had just to surmise and put our head in the clouds for a sec, because nothing feels out of the realms of possibility at this point, right? Even with where
Yeah.
we're at now, what do you think? Where does that go?
Well, I think hardware is going to be a very interesting part of it. I know OpenAI is working on their own hardware. Um, I don't think the final version of all of this interface is going to be with a phone. I think it's going to be
Okay.
more, I know Meta has their glasses. Maybe that's it. Maybe
Yeah.
it's going to be more of an earbud. You just have like an AirPod in and you just talk to it.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know. I think it's going to be more ingrained in applications too. I don't think
Okay.
it's just going to be a chat interface.
So who wins that race?
Yeah, it's a tough one, right? I think it's gonna, like I said, I think as long as you're able to opt out, I mean, as long as you have that escape hatch where you can just plug in a different model or you don't have to
Mhm.
sign in with OpenAI and you can just have your own local model, I think that's the best outcome where you can own that data yourself. And I know we talk about in that next section about what you can do now. That's honestly the gold standard is just running your
Yeah.
own local model. It's not easy right now just because no one has, not a lot of people have GPUs that can handle it, and it takes a lot of technical know-how. But there are other ways to minimize your footprint. And yeah, I don't know if you go through any of these in your day to day. Do you use privacy first LLMs? Do you use no history modes?
No, but I should, and I will now. Because I do want to bring this to a soft end with like at least some sort of, because I like this about the article as well, the way you've kind of said the best practices and the conclusion. And I really, really liked this line that you said where if you believe that agency matters, that systems should be legible, modifiable, and accountable, then this is the time to support these causes, not when it's easy, when it's early. So is it our responsibility covering this stuff to kind of keep educating people on what they should be doing? And then we will get into what people can do to round this thing off, as you've just kind of, alluded to, and we'll go a little bit deeper into that.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, yeah, it's like I said before, I think we're pretty aware of teams that are working on helping this problem. So yeah, I think that's just our duty
Yeah.
to bring them to light.
So, right, let's close this out with the best practices. And I think that it's only right that you rattle through them from no history
Yeah.
modes, and we'll talk through that how people can walk away from this with some actionable stuff.
Yeah, honestly, the easiest thing to do is they have no history modes on ChatGPT, so you can just do temporary chats. And assuming that you believe them, they say they don't keep any logs on those. Um,
That's a deep space
that's
for another day. Yeah.
I mean, it's an assumption for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if you're going to use it, I guess that's better than nothing. And I talk about the whole fact that running local models is probably the holy grail there. But it's so look up Olam or LM Studio if you want to check that out. But if you don't have that, using private LLMs, like there's a couple blockchain projects that have been doing that. So Venice is one of the big ones. Glider is another one. You can use those for private chats. And honestly, the models are still really good. So it won't keep your personal data on there, and that's a great way to do it. If you have to use something like ChatGPT, I would just say like avoid syncing tools to accounts that you don't want it to have access to. So maybe you have like your personal data on a Gmail or a calendar
Mhm.
or a location. Just try to use like a separate one for that. That's all.
Yeah.
Um, not
Okay.
too bad.
Final
And
question.
yeah,
How is this all positive? How do we? I want to leave people in a good.
in a good
Tell me,
mood.
yeah, tell me why this is overall bullish and
Overall bullish. I think
good for the human race.
no. I mean, honestly, yeah. I know we've been pretty negative on all this,
Yeah,
but the net benefit of AI is tremendous. So I
yeah,
think as long as we're working towards improving AI over time, and you don't give up your sovereignty, don't give up what makes you you in the process, I think we all come out ahead.
awesome. Thanks, man. Thanks for your time.
No worries, dude. This was fun.
Like and subscribe, please. Quick one, nothing here is financial advice. It's for entertainment and educational purposes only. Always do your own research or speak to a financial advisor before making any investment decisions.